Howdy folks, just a quick video on tramming. There's a few out there I've seen use the probe as a touch off. With the Masso that may be a little more complicated. For whatever reason, when you probe different areas, it will actually change where it retracts a Z to, and the number here, which is your machine position, will generally come up the same, but this Z0 will come up slightly different. I'm not sure why it's done that way, but it's what I figured out when I was probing for surfacing. So I've set up a little dial indicator rig here. All this is a couple pieces of corian that I've glued together and cut out. This is on my previous machine. And then I just jammed a old 1/4-inch bit in the end there that mounts to the spindle. And on the end, it's got a 1032 tapped hole that screw goes into. Remarkably, corian actually holds threads pretty well, so it's worked for me. Anyway, we'll get on to the tramming bit here. So I initially just trammed it by eye, checking for ridges, etc. And it was pretty good, but then I thought, well, let's get out the gauge and check it a little better. So on the first quadrant, we'll call it, it's been zeroed or close enough to zero. This is displaying in millimeter, not inches, so 0.01 is pretty minuscule. So we'll move around to the next quadrant. Sorry, we gotta move around a lot here, so my video is probably gonna be a little shaky, but next quadrant, 0.07 millimeters, so that's about let's say 3,000, something like that. Move around to the next spot here. Come around the back of the machine. We're at 0.1, so that's just shy of 4 thou. And then we'll go back around and check the last quadrant here. And then we're at 0.04 negative. Negative doesn't really mean much in this case. So this tramming gauge is about 6.5 inches, 6 3/4 from center of spindle to, excuse me, the center of the dial indicator. So over 13, 14 inches, the worst deviance here is 0.04 of an inch. So to me, that is a victory, and I wouldn't ever try to do anything further with it. In terms of actually how I've trammed this, for the side to side on the X, you just loosen your mounting screws, top and bottom. You may want to leave one tight, and then you can just give it a little tap with a rubber mallet to move it ever so slightly. That way you're not going too far. And what I do is I actually, for front to back, I shim in between the gantry mounting block for X and the mount that it sits on Y, both sides. So why I do that? One, if you're just shimming behind the Z plate, if you have to move the Z plate for whatever reason, you need more or less height, whatever reason you need to move it, all your shims are going to fall out. You could use tape, I suppose. I don't know. I've always done it this way with little pieces of shim in here. You can see the little brass stock sticking out. That's always been my method of doing it. Theoretically, excuse me again. Theoretically, you should be able to move that Z slider up and down, and front to back tram should not be affected. Real world, who knows? I haven't really checked it. I don't usually move my Z plate, so anyway, that's how I've done tram. Pretty straightforward. If you have a dial indicator, not too difficult to build a little jig. You could easily build it out of plywood, I'm sure, too. I don't know that I'd want to use hardwood or anything because it may move, but I guess having said that, it's not going to move much over the 10 minutes you're going to have the tramming gauge out, so probably not a big deal. Anyway, hope this helps. Any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments.